Hello. Hello, good morning, you. How are you feeling today? Good morning, Teresa. How did you all enjoy the full moon last night? It was so incredible. And I did not sleep. I slept deeply when I slept, but it was like pockets of time where the moon was blaring into really shining into our bedroom, and our house was illuminated. And part of that was with the snow still on the ground, and it just kind of illuminated the whole forest, and it was really magical. So I hope that you had an opportunity to really enjoy and savor the full moon. I think it was called the wolf blood or blood wolf moon. Wow, it was incredible. So good morning. How are you feeling? And for those of you that don't know me or don't know me well yet, my name is Allison Nail-Malone of Malone Consultants Group. I am a women's executive leadership coach, as well as a mindfulness-based stress reduction mentor. And the mindfulness message was created to have just 10 minutes created just for you to bring in a little bit more mindfulness into your day, including your leadership style, your communication style, and your connection style. So here in the United States, we dedicate this day to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was more than just a social activist. There's just a long list of things that Dr. King really brought forward in leadership style and communication style, and in his presence, centered around love and nonviolence, and also a mindful way of navigating through a really difficult time, which still exists today, as well as leading a nation of people to greater awareness. And so Martin Luther King Jr. was a powerful voice of compassion, and he was a bold example of mindfulness and loving kindness in action. To him, unconditional love was not a passive acceptance, but rather a moral imperative to act and to speak out and to stand up for those that don't have a voice or who don't have a voice yet. Mr. King's message of tolerance centered around the idea of nonviolence, or more than even just the idea, it was just centered around nonviolence. It's not enough to avoid physical violence. One must avoid emotional violence as well. And so Mr. King once said, "You not only refuse to shoot a man, but you refuse to hate him." And at the heart of his message is love. He said, quote, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that." Dr. King's Stride Towards Freedom, which is another book that he wrote, articulated this mindfulness philosophy in the 6 principles of nonviolence. And the premise is that nonviolence accepts suffering without retaliation, and it's translated into the most effective protests. The student protesters in his time who organized the lunch counter sit-ins across the South learned to remain silent and mindful in the face of physical and verbal assaults. They practiced ahead of time throughout workshops how not to respond with violence, which our body is actually very natural and hardwired for that first response when we feel like we're being attacked physically or verbally or emotionally or spiritually. There was a documentary that PBS did in 1987 called Eyes on the Prize, and it centered around a man by the name of Jim Lawson, who actually went and taught and organized student leaders and workshops of nonviolent techniques to begin to basically kind of take the blows and still remain with a sense of dignity and mindfulness, of which you can find on YouTube, and I'll actually put in the comments below as the link. And so when we practice mindfulness, we literally are practicing peace. Not because our experience in meditation or mindfulness is always peaceful, and oftentimes our mind is sometimes far from that, but because we learn that responding peacefully to our experience, even when it's difficult, is really the center of his message. Mindfulness is being present in our body, even in the midst of those kinds of challenges of verbal, of physical, or spiritual, or emotional violence. Mindfulness is seeking to understand first before cultivating your words and actions whenever possible. Mindfulness is standing in your truth and using your voice mindfully and mindfully act even when you are literally or metaphorically in the face of your oppressor or the one that oppresses. You probably have asked, and I ask myself this question quite a bit. My hair is giving me some issues today. How can I be mindful when I feel like sometimes I'm surrounded by an unequal or an unjust and violent society? A peaceful world would be ideal for mindfulness and meditation, Allison. But every day I see and experience oppression. How can I just sit there and focus on myself? It's not necessary to have a perfect society or a pure mind to be mindful. Waiting for inner peace before beginning to meditate or practicing mindfulness is like waiting for a situation that will never arise. It's like a woman waiting for the ocean to be calm before she takes her bath in it. Mindfulness does not require peace, but instead it helps develop peace. Mindfulness fully acknowledges whatever thoughts arise without hiding from them. And when I try to remain mindful throughout the day, my attention can be pulled away from my breath or my thoughts and to my existence with the highly unequal power structures. I see oppression in the workplace, in the media, and in my interactions with others. And it's tempting to avoid situations in which oppression is obvious. And, that can look like keeping a homogenous community or just saying, I'm not going to pay attention to that. And it's really our privilege. It is a privilege to do so in and of itself as a manifestation of social inequality, of being able to have the luxury of ignoring it if I wanted to. Struggling to force oppression out of my mind is actually not mindfulness. Mindfulness is a calm observation of experiences as they come and go, no matter how unpleasant. I may find that I have internalized thoughts of an oppressor, primarily out of the sense of superiority from my privileged social standing in relation to race, into my class, to gender, or any other modes of identity through which the structure is reinforced. Without mindfulness, it is so easy for someone like me who is privileged to turn away from oppression or oppressed marginalized groups and protest to bring awareness to injustice. Avoiding oppressive thoughts seems like it's a pleasant strategy in the short term, but it precludes the genuine observation of oppressive mind states, and therefore making real society transformation almost impossible. Being mindful means being aware of what other people are suffering from, and also being mindful unmasks the ability to be compassionate with myself or with yourself, but it also brings a deeper compassion for others and with others. Dr. King's 6 principles of nonviolence are fundamental tenets of mindfulness and loving kindness and compassionate action to speak out and stand up for those who don't have a voice. And I'll end with these 6 principles. Number 1, nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. It is an active nonviolent resistance to evil, and it is aggressive spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. Number 2, nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding first. The end result of nonviolence is redemption and reconciliation. The purpose of nonviolence is the creation of a beloved community. I love that so much. I think that's probably my favorite so far of all 6. Number 3 is nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. Nonviolence recognizes that evildoers are also victims and are not evil people. The nonviolent resistor seeks to defeat evil and not people. Number 4, Nonviolence holds that suffering can actually educate and inform and transform. Nonviolence does accept the suffering without retaliation. Unearned suffering is redemptive and can have tremendous educational and transformational possibilities. Number 5, nonviolence chooses love instead of hate every time. Nonviolence resists violence of the spirit as well as the body. Nonviolent love is spontaneous, it's unmotivated, it's unselfish, and very creative. And principle 6 is nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice and that there is a deep faith that justice will eventually win. Dr. Martin Luther King's mindful leadership and communication of nonviolence and compassion used with the power of words and action to maintain that all people everywhere, regardless of color or creed, are equal members of the human family. I hope today that you spend some time mindfully focused on the time that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. brought to our nation and continues to leave his legacy of nonviolence, of mindfulness, and compassion. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you back here Wednesday at 7:20 a.m. Central Time.